Welcome back, my students, to Comic Class, and in today's video we're going to be looking at Nick Spencer's The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, which covers the 2099 story arc. And yeah, guys, this is a pretty good volume. I really enjoyed it. I finished reading it last night, and I decided to work on this video for you guys and get it done as fast as possible. And yeah, so without further ado, guys, let's jump right into this story. Let's go. So, The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7, the 2099 story arc, basically starts off with Miguel O'Hara, basically the Spider-Man of 2099, and it seems like he's been captured by some people, some type of corporation that are trying to study him on the Earth 616 universe, basically the main continuity of Spider-Man universe. Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. Now we get to see that the people that are studying him actually want to use his knowledge of the future to place patents to make themselves super rich, even more richer than what they already are in the future. So yeah, these guys are not playing around, and they have a huge plan to, use and abuse Spider-Man of 2099's ability of knowing the future, because he comes from their future. So, it's pretty cool. Now we go into more of the modern take on Spider-Man, and we learn that Peter is actually enjoying college life again, and basically is trying to interact with his fellow classmates. This is where we're introduced to different types of characters, and yeah, his classmates are actually really well done, have very cool personalities. We're introduced to this guy named Jamie, who actually has one of Peter's old gadgets, basically, that I guess he made before Dr. Octopus took over his body, and called a webware, I guess. And basically, Jamie reveals that it actually isn't working the way it's supposed to, and they uses it kind of as an alarm emergency system at the moment. So yeah, Jamie's gonna be a pretty prominent character, I guess, going forward. So yeah, so after this, we get to see that Spider-Man and his cousin or sister, Teresa, I think it's his sister, basically, that we saw in the last story arc, they're actually working together yet again to try to take on the Chameleon for stopping him from doing a deal with the Foreigner. And this is where Spider-Man and Teresa basically show up, and they start taking on their goons and henchmen, and it's a pretty cool action scene. We get to see that, the Foreigner has some jack-o'-lanterns, I think is what they're called. He basically has them and sets them on Teresa and Spider-Man. Now, eventually, Spider-Man and Teresa, they kind of split off, and Teresa takes on all these henchmen and trying to take on the Chameleon, while Spider-Man takes on the Foreigner one-on-one. I really enjoyed this part of the story because the way that they utilize like a no-panel type grid, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's like one splash page, but with a ton of action. Very unique. So whoever did the art for this issue definitely deserves some respect. It was a very unique take on the splash page format. Now, Spider-Man gets attacked from behind by Silver Sable, it seems, but we'll come back to that later. Now, we get to see, and we jump back to Miguel O'Hara, basically waking up from his type of coma, and he basically attacks the people that are trying to study him, basically. And he basically breaks out of his chamber, basically, and the equipment that they had around him, and makes his escape. But when he jumps out the window, he realizes that his powers aren't working the way that they're supposed to, and he crashes into a car down below. Now, after this, we get to see that these monsters that come from, I guess, Miguel O'Hara's timeline, that or they're subjects of those people that were working on him, basically come and try to capture him again. So he engages in a fight with them while he's thinking about his girlfriend and child. Now, we jump back to Spider-Man and see that Spider-Man and the Silver Sable basically are in this deadlock. Basically, she's thinking about taking his life. This is where Teresa shoots through the head of Silver Sable, revealing that she was just a robot, a replica. A pretty cool panel. After this, we get to see and get the explanation of why exactly Silver Sable was a robot. It turns out the real Silver Sable is dying from a type of incurable illness that only the Infinity Formula, which the Foreigner was going to get from the Chameleon, would actually kill her, though she would have to take it for her entire life, as Teresa said to her. Now, the Foreigner and Teresa basically get into it, and Silver Sable basically explains that she's a leader of a country, and that she would gladly give up people's lives in order to protect her own, because of how important her life is to her people. So this leaves Spider-Man and Teresa to like leave, and Teresa to tell Spider-Man that he has to choose who's going to do a deal with a foreigner to save his friend's life, because him and Silver Sable are actually kind of friends. So we'll see what Spider-Man's going to do. Now we jump in forward and we get to see that Spider-Man and Jamie basically are doing a presentation for their, school project. Basically, so we're introduced to a new type of creation that Jamie has worked on, calling it the Clarovent or something like that. And yeah, this basically is a type of orb that tells you about the future, basically predicts the future for you. And he gives a little small demonstration on what Peter Parker was doing during the time that he was gone, and it was all correct. So it looks like there is a future for this project, and it will definitely be diving more into this later on in the arc. Now we get to see the Chameleon use his abilities to shapeshift to kind of try to goad the people into attacking Doctor Doom's country. That's the big plan of the Countess that is hiring Chameleon, is that she wants to cause a civil war between her and the country of Doctor Doom. And this is where their Hitman basically, and I think his name actually is Hitman, basically locks onto Doctor Doom while he's trying to get out of his car. Now before we go into the assassination attempt, we get to see that Spider-Man 2099 is basically saying that he has came back to try to stop this assassination, it seems, because this will lead Doctor Doom into becoming an overlord and not wanting to stop with just his country and basically try to take over the world. So it seems like that's the reason why Miguel O'Hara came back. Now we get to see that the Hitman basically has the lock on Doctor Doom once he exits his vehicle and basically gets shot down and assassinated. And it's a pretty big scene, and it seems like this is the end of Doctor Doom, even though we as the Raiders know that's not going to happen. It's revealed, as we predicted, that it was a Doombot, and that Spider-Man shows everybody and makes this funny quip about how Doctor Doom probably hasn't left his house for years, and that it's mainly just Hulu all day and all night. Thought that was a funny joke and gag. But it seems like Doctor Doom is not happy, and he's pretty pissed, and he's going to take it out on the people in New York until they give up who tried to assassinate him. So basically, Spider-Man and Miguel O'Hara finally meet up, and Miguel basically puts Spider-Man into this type of force field and tells him that it's his job to save the future, because without Spider-Man doing what he needs to do, Miguel O'Hara will cease to exist. And Miguel O'Hara leaves Spider-Man with a gift, with a giant explosion of energy, which powered the Clarovent, basically. Now we get to see that Doctor Doom is basically taking over New York, and he's demanding them to give over the traitor to his country that tried to assassinate him. And all the heroes that are in New York at the moment are fighting off the Doombots and trying to save the city. Now Spider-Man and Teresa basically go off to try to find the Chameleon. Now the Chameleon is basically talking to the Countess and telling her that this wasn't part of the plan, and that his city was not supposed to be at war, and that war was on his own doorstep. Now this is where the Countess reveals that she actually sold the Chameleon out, and that Peter Parker and Teresa are on their way, and this is where they break in and basically kind of interrogate the Chameleon. Now after this, the Chameleon takes them to where the Hitman is being placed, and he's actually dead. But it seems like there's something to do with the Jackal backstory and the Hitman, and that the Hitman keeps getting reincarnated or something like that. It's pretty hard to understand, but mainly you can't kill him forever. So basically, after this is found out, we get to see that Teresa notices that Spider-Man's back is glowing, and he notices that the Clarovent basically has been powered up by Miguel O'Hara, and that the gift he gave him was the ability to use the Clarovent. Now, Spider-Man uses the Clarovent to basically try to figure out how to take on Doctor Doom and stop him from taking over the city. And yeah, it's a really cool scene that shows all these different possibilities in the background. So Spider-Man basically goes into a simulation for every possible probability of if he can take on Doctor Doom and get him to stop attacking the city. And this leads us to a bunch of funny scenes that show different outcomes. And yeah, it's really cool to see and how they handle this as a comedy moment, but also trying to figure out how to move the plot forward. Eventually, Spider-Man takes on Doctor Doom, and he has one plan that it might work, because it's only 51%. And yeah, Spider-Man is not a match for Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom is on a whole other power scale than Spider-Man. Spider-Man knows he can't be Doctor Doom. So basically, Spider-Man is about to get defeated by Doctor Doom when Spider-Man reveals that they actually betrayed Doctor Doom, and that somebody's putting him up to attack in New York City to get everyone to team up against his own country and take him off the face of the map, basically. And yeah, this leads Doctor Doom to kind of like just let Spider-Man go and realizes that he has been tricked and that the person who tricked him must pay. But after this, the Doombots basically attack all these different monuments and social places in New York City that will take millions or billions of dollars to replace. And Spider-Man basically tells him what exactly is he doing, and this is where Doctor Doom blasts him back and says silence. That Doom answers to no man. But we'll find out why exactly this happened in a little bit. Now we jump and we see that Miguel O'Hara is actually alive and that he was not erased from the timeline, and he basically, I guess, was sent back or something to when his wife and kid were alive, or maybe they were saved. I have no idea. But it looks like he's going to be able to raise his kid with his girlfriend or wife, whatever she is. And yeah, that's a pretty happy ending for Miguel O'Hara. We can see the Countess basically visit Silver Sable, telling her that everything went according to plan, and that she's actually the one that was controlling the Doombots with the weapon that Chameleon had provided for the Hitman. That when the Hitman actually assassinated the Doombot, he's basically putting something in its machinery that would let them tap into the Doomware hardware and basically control all the Doombots. But she knows that Dr. Doom would not admit that someone took control of his own creations, and that he would allow himself to be the enemy of everybody for attacking New York City in the way he did at the very end, destroying tons of their monuments and special possessions. Now, this is pretty cool. So it looks like, you know, the Countess basically saying that a war is going to come, and that she hopes Silver Sable will choose the right side and fight as well. So she leaves, and we get to see that Teresa basically is watching the Chameleon get interrogated, and the Chameleon basically just laughs and tells her that the fun's just getting started. And yeah, that's the end of the story arc. Now, real quick before we end it, I do want to mention what Peter Parker's ending was in this arc, in that it looks like he is going to be teaming up with Jamie to kind of like build the Clarabit and make it, you know, way better than what it actually is, and give it a power source to actually be able to predict the future. And I don't think this is going to end well for Peter, of course, or Jamie, or maybe Jamie will turn evil, as we'll see in the next arc. But yeah, but it looks like Peter is going to be working with Jamie in the future. And, you know, the story is really picking up now with all these new side characters. And yeah, that was Volume 7, you know, the 2099 story arc of The Amazing Spider-Man by Ned Spencer. And yeah, guys, so this volume was actually pretty good. I did not have high hopes for this volume. I'm not the biggest fan of 2099, but man, Ned Spencer did a good job in making both characters likable, and he gave enough time to, you know, Miguel O'Hara without taking away from the mainline Spider-Man, you know, because this is his story, not 2099's story. So despite 2099 being a part of the story arc, he wasn't the main focus. I think that's why it worked so well, and that they were both used in good portions of the story. Overall, 2099 was ridiculously good compared to Volume 6, Absolute Carnage. It was a huge step up, and I can't wait to review Volume 8 and get on that as well. Volume 9 will be Sins Rising, which is an arc I never have read. From that point on, everything's going to be completely new to me. I mean, this was new too, but I did read the first 2 issues of this beforehand. But from Volume 9 upwards, I have no idea what's going to happen, and I'm so excited for each of those volume/story arcs. But yeah, that's going to be all, guys. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Marvel and DC trade paperback/volume reviews. I'm also, after I'm finished with this Amazing Spider-Man run, I will be doing other comics. I have a ton of different video ideas I'm going to be dropping the next few weeks. So yeah, be sure to look out for that. Until next time, guys, God bless you. And until the next lesson, keep on reading.
I am who I'm meant to be. I am who I'm meant to be. Over and out again. My future needed clarity.